Today, we have more information than ever before. But today, it's also much harder to separate fact from fiction than ever before. You could find anything you want online, and that's the problem. The internet is a mix of accurate and inaccurate information, echo chambers and opinions. The problem isn't a lack of information, it's a lack of reliable information. But if we want to understand the truth about the experiences of Australians who served in these wars, we need reliable sources we can turn to. This is why it is important to preserve the diaries, photographs, and letters written by the Australians who lived in these wars. Unlike random websites or social media posts, these are authentic sources from people who lived it. But here's what makes these items truly valuable. They don't just give us reliable facts. They challenge the stories we've been told and reveal the complexity behind many of our tidy Australian legends. When we look at the pictures and read diaries of the ANZACs, we're doing two things at once. We're learning about them, but we're also questioning what we already thought we knew about them. It's kind of ironic. The black and white photos show us that things were never simply black and white. Yes, the ANZACs were absolutely heroes. No one would argue with that. But when we take the time to read their words and look at their pictures, we can see that they didn't have superhuman strength and wisdom. They weren't legends or marble statues in a park. They were people. They didn't always feel 100% confident. None of them had a whole picture of what was going on. They were regular people, like us. And that reminds us that they were people who were afraid, who were confused and scared and disgusted, and trapped in situations that were well beyond their ability to escape. We could see that many of the things that they were caught up in were out of their control. We can read accounts of what it was like to actually be there. In 1940, Lance Corporal Lindsay Negus was running for his life from the German army. He wrote to his mother, "It took us from the 27th to the night of the 30th of May to reach our embarkation point. I was knocked over by a lorry, fell down a hillside twice, and had no sleep for a week. Frightened to go to sleep, legs and hands cut and full of thorns. But we all kept going, anything to beat our ruthless enemy." The legendary ANZACs were absolutely heroes. But still, they were not so different from us today. Like us, they were regular people, with regular vulnerabilities and frailties. Still, history has shown that many were able to rise above and do the job. Lieutenant Colonel Weary Dunlop was one of them. As a surgeon and prisoner of war on the Burma-Thailand Railway, he witnessed fear in every man around him and felt it himself. Yet in his diary, he wrote, "Every man here is afraid, myself included, but fear does not excuse us from our duty to one another. Courage," he wrote, "is not the absence of fear, but the determination to act despite it." Weary Dunlop's words show us that heroism isn't about being fearless. It's about serving despite the fear, about choosing duty over self-preservation. Probably, the most challenging things we find are not the things to be proud of, but the things we Australians should be ashamed of, like the treatment of the Indigenous soldiers. As Indigenous activist Auntie Dot Peters said about the experiences of her father, Vincent Robert Peters, "On the battlefield, everyone was equal. Aboriginal and white Australians fought side by side, but any equality was stripped upon the return home. Attitudes are not changed. Aboriginal people were still subject to discrimination. They couldn't go to the bar to have a beer with mates. Their kids couldn't go to swimming pools. Aboriginal people could die for their country, but it would be more than 20 years after the war before they could even vote." This shows that while diaries, letters, and photographs celebrate heroism, they also reveal injustice. They let us confront the full story, the honours and the horrors. So why are these resources important? Because they allow us to see the lives behind the legends. They were sons and daughters who became soldiers, nurses who became prisoners, and boys who became traumatized men. They weren't perfect, they often came up short, but ultimately they rose to meet their moment, which challenges us to rise and meet our moment. These diary entries aren't just useful, they're powerful, because only by seeing the full truth can we do better. They provide not just history, but hope.